like to begin with a prayer to St. Joseph to invoke the great defender and protector of the Catholic Church, defender and protector of the Holy Family, and defender and protector of our families. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. O glorious St. Joseph, to you God committed the care of his only begotten Son amid the many dangers of this world. We come to you and ask you to take under your special protection the children God has given us. Through holy baptism they became children of God and members of his holy church. We consecrate them to you today, that through this consecration they may become your foster children. Guard them, guide their steps in life, and form their hearts after the hearts of Jesus and Mary. Saint Joseph, who felt the tribulation and worry of a parent when the child Jesus was lost, protect our dear children for time and eternity. May you be their father and counselor. Let them, like Jesus, grow in age as well as in wisdom and grace before God and men. Preserve them for the corruption of this world, and give us the grace one day to be united with them in heaven forever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. And then shall many be scandalized, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall seduce many. And because iniquity hath abounded, the charity of many shall grow cold. But he that shall persevere to the end, he shall be saved. Matthew 24:10-13. Preach the word, be instant in season, out of season. Reprove, entreat, rebuke in all patience and doctrine. For there shall be a time when they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires they will heap to themselves teachers, having itching ears, and will indeed turn away their hearing from the truth, but will be turned unto fables. 2 Timothy 4:2-5. For those of you who don't know me, a very brief biography. My name is John Lacken. I'm the secretary of the recently formed Lumen Fidei Institute, about which you can find out more at our stand and by talking to me later. I'm married to Naomi for 30 years. We have 8 children, all of whom were delivered by caesarean section. I was raised in a solid Catholic family in South County, Dublin. In my late teens, however, I drifted away from the practice of my Catholic faith and began living a very disordered and sinful life. But, thanks be to God, I came back to the practice of my faith about 2 years before I got married, and I've continued to learn and to study the faith ever since. I am one of those strange creatures who loves to read and study church documents. I began writing about Catholic Church teaching on marriage and family life for the fortnightly Catholic Voice newspaper in December 2013. I initially approached Anthony Murphy, the editor, because I was concerned that Catholic teaching on marriage was not being properly proclaimed and defended in Ireland, and because I believe that putting teaching on Catholic marriage into practice would solve a lot of the problems we are currently experiencing within our society. I wrote about some of those problems in that newspaper. We have virtually no vocations to priesthood and religious life in Ireland. Our young people in the age bracket of 18 to 24 years old are abandoning the faith at a rate of over 80%. Just over 1.2 million people, most of them baptized Catholics, voted for same-sex marriage, contrary to Catholic Church teaching in 2015. And in May of last year, just over 1.4 million people voted to allow the Irish government to legislate for the killing of certain innocent human beings. Many Catholics are abandoning their marriages and forming new adulterous unions. Our young people, in the main, prefer to live together before they get married, if they marry at all. And if they do get married, they wait until they're in their 30s before doing so. The average age for getting married being 36.1 years old in 2017, with an increase in the number of humanist and civil non-religious marriage ceremonies. Most worryingly, the suicide rate is increasing amongst our young. I recently looked at a report on suicide from 2016 called Young Lives in Ireland, which was put together by the NSRF, the National Suicide Research Foundation. In the executive summary, it says, "Suicide is one of the leading causes of death among young people, and in Ireland, peak rates of hospital-treated self-harm are among 20 to 24-year-old males and 15 to 19-year-old females." I also looked at a 2018 article covering a 10-year Irish National Registry study of self-harm among children, adolescents and young adults from 2007 to 2016. The results of that study are as follows. After mentioning the statistics I quoted above, the article notes that between 2007 and 2016, rates of self-harm increased in the cohort studied by 22%, with increases most pronounced for females and those aged 10 to 14 years of age. There were marked increases in specific methods of self-harm, including those associated with high lethality. Their conclusions, I quote, "The findings indicate that the age of onset of self-harm is decreasing. Increasing rates of self-harm, along with increases in highly lethal methods, indicate that targeted interventions in key transition stages for young people are warranted," unquote. Something has gone dreadfully wrong with our society when suicide is a leading cause of death amongst our young people, when some in the 15 to 24 year age bracket feel that life is not worth living anymore, and when self-harm and attempted suicide is increasing amongst 10 to 14-year-old children. This is a time when our young people should be filled with excitement, hope, and wonder about what the future holds. They should not be thinking about ending their lives. I believe that the solution to these problems lies with the Catholic Church and with Catholic parents. Jesus Christ established the Catholic Church, and he told us, "I am come that they may have life and may have it more abundantly." John 10:10. So, if the Catholic Church is the solution, then why is it that in a Catholic country like Ireland, the solution does not appear to be working? The answer comes, I believe, from the scripture passages with which I opened this talk. False prophets and false teachers are spreading error within the Catholic Church at a phenomenal and ever-increasing rate. And this is leading people astray and damaging our society as a result. Because what is often portrayed as Catholicism is in fact a distortion of the Catholic faith, a distortion that is designed to appease people's feelings and emotions rather than challenging them to deny themselves, to take up their crosses, and to lead holy lives. And don't be fooled. We are all affected by this and by the anti-Christian and anti-Catholic societal currents that swarm around us. Ask any priest who regularly hears confessions. That marriage and family life is the key area was confirmed by Sister Lucia of Fatima when she wrote to Cardinal Caffarra around 1984, already quoted by Sean. "The final battle between the Lord and the reign of Satan will be about marriage and the family. Don't be afraid," she added, "because anyone who works for the sanctity of marriage and the family will always be fought and opposed in every way, because this is the decisive issue." And then she concluded, "However, Our Lady has already crushed its head." God established the marital family of one man, one woman, and their biological children as the foundation of human society. The practicing Catholic family, and by that I mean a family where the parents are fully aware of Catholic teaching, that the primary end of marriage is children and their Catholic education, and they fully submit in humble obedience to all authentic Catholic teaching. I am not saying that they are a perfect family, but that they continually try their best, despite their many failures and sinfulness, to put the Catholic faith into practice. This practicing Catholic family is the most pro-life place on this earth. The practicing Catholic family is the safest place for children to be reared, because it is the place where God, from all eternity, wished to place children. The practicing Catholic family is the only foundation on which to build a just society. You cannot build a just society which respects the rights of all on any other foundation than the practicing Catholic family, because this is the foundation chosen by God on which to build human society. Quoting from the opening line of Dom Jean-Pierre de Caussade's book, Abandonment to Divine Providence, sanctity consists in fidelity to the order established by God and in submission to all his operations. The reason why Ireland can no longer be called a Catholic country is because so many families have drifted away from the authentic practice of the Catholic faith. Catholic families make up a Catholic society and a Catholic nation. If you want Ireland to return to the Catholic faith, then you must concentrate most of your efforts on helping families to return to the faith by helping to catechize the parents so that they can properly catechize their children. Marriage and family is the decisive issue. Now, marriage is a sacrament. As laity, this is our sacrament. We are the ministers of the sacrament. We are the ones who live it. We are the ones to whom God entrusts his children, so that we will rear those children in the kingdom of the Catholic faith. When Catholic marriage and family come under attack, then we, the laity, must come together, and we must rise to defend the sacrament of marriage against any and all who would undermine the sacramental nature of marriage, regardless of where those attacks come from. And I say regardless of where those attacks come from, because today the most serious attacks against Catholic marriage and family are coming from within the Catholic Church, from those who spread falsehood in her name. Some recent examples. In December 2017 in Italy, a newly appointed priest and moral theologian to the Pontifical Academy for Life, Father Maurizio Chiodi, said publicly, contrary to infallible church teaching, that in certain cases a married couple may be required to use artificial contraception. Father Chiodi has not been publicly corrected for the errors he promotes or been removed from his position. In Germany, in January of last year, the vice president of the German Bishops' Conference, Bishop Franz Joseph Bode, called for a discussion on the possibility of blessing homosexual unions, of which blessings he himself is in favour. To date, Bishop Bode has not been publicly corrected for the errors he promotes or been removed from his position. There are problems at home too. The Irish bishops launched a programme into every parish in the country in preparation for the World Meeting of Families, which they called Amoris. The programme included an image of two lesbians embracing, with the following erroneous paragraph above the image. While the Church upholds the ideal of marriage as a permanent commitment between a man and a woman, other unions exist which provide mutual support to the couple. The image and quotation were subsequently removed without any explanation given as to how they got there in the first place. More recently, the videos were released for the Irish Bishops' Amoris programme, and they feature a woman called Gemma. Gemma is a campaigner for same-sex relationships. She promotes the mortally sinful same-sex lifestyle. She recently celebrated the fact that one of her sons has been living the same-sex lifestyle for more than 12 years. And during the Irish Bishop's video, where she talks of her son's same-sex lifestyle, Catholic Church teaching on same-sex relationships is not presented. The promotion of the false LGBT ideology, which is contrary to Catholic teaching, has also entered Irish Catholic schools at both the primary and secondary level. Recently, a Catholic parent contacted me to tell me that the pro-homosexual lifestyle group belonged to have a full-page advert in their son's maths book. He is a first-year student in a Catholic secondary school. The book is published by Folens and is called Active Maths 1, and the ad is supported by our government. Did Folens or the government seek permission from the parents of the Catholic children they are promoting this anti-Catholic propaganda to? I was also told by a Catholic parent of a 2-hour presentation on internet bullying for first years in a Catholic secondary school, where the children were presented with videos which told of scenarios such as 2 boys engaging in intimacy, where a camera had been hidden in the room. In the story, the event was posted on social media, resulting in one of the boys hanging himself. Another scenario was presented to these children, which resulted in a boy throwing himself off a bridge. The presenter of this program advised the 13-year-old children to monitor how much porn they were watching. Not to stop watching it, but to monitor how much they were watching. This was done in a Catholic secondary school for boys, which has an Irish bishop as its patron. The child in question came home upset and shocked at what was presented as normal. Is it any wonder that the rate of self-harm is increasing amongst 10 to 14-year-old children when this is what is being put before them in Catholic schools in Ireland? In any other context, an adult discussing this kind of thing with children without parents being made fully aware would be regarded as an inappropriate interaction between a grown man and children. But it is given a free pass because it is taking place in Irish Catholic schools, which have bishops as patrons, and because it is done in the name of preventing bullying. In his book, Making Gay OK, Robert O'Reilly explains how this strategy was developed by Kevin Jennings, the founder of Gilsen, one of the gay movements in the United States. He developed the strategy of getting the LGBT agenda into primary and secondary schools by emphasizing safety under the guise of preventing harm to same-sex attracted individuals from homophobic bullies. People who uphold Catholic teaching on human sexuality are now classed as homophobic. But this is aimed at your children. It is your children who are being corrupted. So these are just some of the problems and opposition that we are faced with as Catholic parents as we try to bring our children up in the Catholic faith. The Catholic family is under attack, and Catholic parents must rise up to defend the Catholic family and to promote authentic Catholic family living. One of the attributes of God is that he does not change. Neither do his plans for marriage and family, as set forth in the book of Genesis, increase and multiply and fill the earth. As St. James puts it, every best gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no change nor shadow of alteration. James 1:17. God created marriage for the purpose of begetting children for his kingdom. He gave those children parents whose role it is to protect those children and to guide them to the heavenly kingdom. Because God does not change, we can also say that his teachings do not change. What was true of Catholic marriage in the year 400 was true of Catholic marriage in the year 1100, was true of Catholic marriage in the year 1930, and is still true of Catholic marriage today. Sometimes it is good to pick a particular year or years from history because of significant events that happened in those years, which led to a clear restatement of Catholic doctrine. I would like to take the year running from December the 31st, 1929 to December the 31st, 1930, because this is just such a significant year. 10 years prior to 1930, a resolution was passed at the Lambeth Conference of 1920, which read in part, "We utter an emphatic warning against the use of unnatural means for the avoidance of conception, together with the grave dangers, physical, moral, and religious, thereby incurred, and against the evils with which the extension of such use threatens the race." Resolution 68, the Lambeth Conference 1920. What this resolution shows us is that the whole of Christendom, including the Protestant sects, were unanimous in their condemnation of contraception. Resolution 68 also said, "We steadfastly uphold what must always be regarded as the governing considerations of Christian marriage. One is the primary purpose for which marriage exists, namely the continuation of the race through the gift and heritage of children. The other is the paramount importance in married life of deliberate and thoughtful self-control." The Lambeth Conference 1920, confirming what the Catholic Church has always taught regarding marriage. Move forward 10 years to the Lambeth Conference of July to August 1930, and to resolution number 15, where interestingly, they stated that the primary and obvious method of limiting or avoiding parenthood was abstinence from the marital act, but then went on to give permission for contraception to be used by married couples. Not many people realize what this seemingly simple declaration meant for society. But in January of this year, it became legal in Ireland to kill innocent human beings. And you can trace a path from the dam breach that was initiated at the Lambeth Conference in 1930 to the legislation in Ireland today which permits the killing of innocent human beings. The same path from the Lambeth Conference of 1930 to the legalised killing of the innocent can also be traced in America and the UK. As the 1920 Lambeth Conference noted, contraception represents a threat to the human race. And we are now living in a time where those consequences are upon us, with over 50 million children lost to surgical abortion every year. Pope Pius XI was on the throne of St. Peter in 1930, and on December the 1st, he issued the encyclical Casti Connubii on Christian marriage to try to counter the evil that had been unleashed on society by the capitulation of the Lambeth Conference of Bishops to the population controllers and eugenicists. In the third paragraph, speaking of those who deny the great sanctity of Christian wedlock, he says, "And since these most pernicious errors and depraved morals have begun to spread even amongst the faithful and are gradually gaining ground, in our office as Christ's vicar upon earth and supreme shepherd and teacher, we consider it our duty to raise our voice, to keep the flock committed to our care from poisoned pastures, and as far as in us lies, to preserve it from harm." Unquote. On December the 31st, 1929, just 1 year earlier, Pope Pius XI issued his encyclical Divini Ilius Magistri on the Christian education of youth. I strongly urge you, if you have not already done so, to study both of these encyclicals in depth. They're not that thick or big, especially if you are a Catholic parent. There is an old Latin legal saying, nemo dat quod non habet. One does not give what one does not have. The same rule can be applied to parents. You cannot pass on the faith to your children if you are not fully conversant in the faith yourself. Therefore, you must study the Catholic faith to the best of your abilities. Now, I could not do justice to one of Pope Pius XI encyclicals in a talk of just under 1 hour, let alone 2 of them. So I just want to take some excerpts from both of them, which I hope will give you some insights as to what is wrong in Ireland today, and as to what you as Catholics, especially Catholic parents, need to do in this situation to help your children and your neighbour. Let me begin with number 7 of Divini Ilius Magistri. It is therefore as important to make no mistake in education as it is to make no mistake in the pursuit of the last end, with which the whole work of education is intimately and necessarily connected. In fact, since education consists essentially in preparing man for what he must be and for what he must do here below, in order to attain the sublime end for which he was created, it is clear that there can be no true education which is not wholly directed to man's last end, and that in the present order of providence, since God has revealed himself to us in the person of his only begotten Son, who alone is the way, the truth, and the life, there can be no ideally perfect education which is not Christian education. In number 10, he says, "Now, in order that no mistake be made in this work of utmost importance, and in order to conduct it in the best manner possible with the help of God's grace, it is necessary to have a clear and definite idea of Christian education in its essential aspects, vis-a-vis who has the mission to educate, who are the subjects to be educated, what are the necessary accompanying circumstances, what is the end and object proper to Christian education according to God's established order in the economy of his divine providence." I don't know about you, but I find this a joy to read and to hear because of the clarity of thought it expresses. There's no confusion, no ambiguity. The Pope tells it like it is. The next paragraph is also very interesting and informative. This is number 11. Education is essentially a social and not a mere individual activity. Now, there are three necessary societies, distinct from one another and yet harmoniously combined by God, into which man is born. Two, namely the family and civil society, belong to the natural order. The third, the church, to the supernatural order. And then he gives us this statement, which every Catholic parent should memorize. In the first place comes the family, instituted directly by God for its peculiar purpose, the generation and formation of offspring. For this reason, it has priority of nature and therefore of rights over civil society, unquote. He then goes on to explain that the family is an imperfect society and that it needs both the civil society and the Catholic Church in order to be able to fulfill its mission. He shows where the balance lies between the duties of each of these societies, the family, the state, and the church. Later, in paragraph 23, he speaks of the inalienable rights of the Catholic Church over education. Again, it is the inalienable right as well as the indispensable duty of the Church to watch over the entire education of her children in all institutions, public or private, not merely in regard to the religious instruction they are given, but in regard to every other branch of learning and every regulation insofar as religion and morality are concerned, unquote. This is where the Irish bishops are failing with regard to Catholic schools in Ireland. The state has been allowed to overstep the boundaries proper to it and to usurp both the rights of the Church and of Catholic families. And the state now controls the syllabus in Catholic schools. We now have the ridiculous situation in Ireland where the secular state, which supports divorce, contraception, same-sex marriage, the killing of children up to 12 weeks after conception, and is now moving towards euthanasia, dictates the curriculum to be followed in Catholic schools, including the religious program. And our bishops permit it. So too do most Catholic parents. The Catholic Church's oversight into education in Ireland has been lost. And Pope Pius XI once again very clearly tells us what the consequences will be, which consequences we witness in our society today. Here's number 24 of Divini Ilius Magistri. Nor should the exercise of this right be considered undue interference, but rather maternal care on the part of the Church in protecting her children from the grave danger of all kinds of doctrinal and moral evil. Moreover, this watchfulness of the Church not merely can create no real inconvenience, but must, on the contrary, confer valuable assistance in the right ordering and well-being of families and of civil society. For it keeps far away from youth the moral poison which at that inexperienced and changeable age more easily penetrates the mind and more rapidly spreads its baneful effects. For it is true, as Leo XIII has wisely pointed out, that without proper religious and moral instruction, every form of intellectual culture will be injurious. For young people not accustomed to respect God will be unable to bear the restraint of a virtuous life, and never having learned to deny themselves anything, they will easily be incited to disturb the public order, unquote. An example of this disturbing of the public order by youth was witnessed in the May referendum last year, where an exit poll showed that over 86% of 18 to 24-year-olds voted to allow the killing of innocent human beings. Prophetic words from Pope Pius XI. Just a few more quotes from Divini Ilius Magistri, which I hope will give you enough of a taste for this wonderful document that you will begin to study it and to fight to defend your rights as parents over the education of your children, to protect them from all harm and falsehood. This is Numbers 30 to 33. In the first place, The Church's mission of education is in wonderful agreement with that of the family, for both proceed from God, and in a remarkably similar manner. God directly communicates to the family in the natural order fecundity, which is the principle of life, and hence also the principle of education to life, together with authority, the principle of order. The angelic doctor, with his wonted clearness of thought and precision of style, says, the Father, according to the flesh, has in a particular way a share in that principle, which in a manner universal is found in God. The Father is the principle of generation, of education and discipline, and of everything that bears upon the perfecting of human life. This is still Divini Ilias Magistri. The family therefore holds directly from the Creator the mission and hence the right to educate the offspring. A right inalienable, because inseparably joined to the strict obligation, a right anterior to any right whatever of civil society and of the state, and therefore inviolable on the part of any power on earth. That this right is inviolable, St. Thomas proves as follows. The child is naturally something of the father, so by natural right the child, before reaching the use of reason, is under the father's care. Hence, it would be contrary to natural justice if the child, before the use of reason, were removed from the care of its parents, or if any disposition were made concerning him against the will of the parents. And as this duty on the part of parents continues up to the time when the child is in a position to provide for itself, this same inviolable parental right of education also endures. Nature intends not merely the generation of the offspring, but also its development and advance to the perfection of man considered as man, that is, to the state of virtue, says the same Thomas Aquinas. Unquote. Regarding the catechesis of children, it is very important that Catholic parents understand Catholic teaching on this matter. Fathers, are you aware that we fathers have primary responsibility for ensuring that our children are properly catechized? We are the spiritual heads of our families, who with our wives must ensure the proper catechesis of our children. But as fathers, it is primarily our responsibility. When we fathers die, and all of us are going to die, God will ask us to account for the talents that He bestowed on us in the form of entrusting His children to us. He will demand an account of us as to how we provided for and ensured our children's Catholic education, and as to how we protected these innocent ones from error. In his apostolic exhortation, Familiaris Consortio of 1981, Pope St. John Paul II reiterated what is contained in Divini Ilias Magistri and reminded us that the right and duty of parents to give education is essential, since it is connected with the transmission of human life. It is original and primary with regard to the educational role of others, on account of the uniqueness of the loving relationship between parents and children, and it is irreplaceable and inalienable, and therefore incapable of being entirely delegated to others or usurped by others. Familiaris Consortio 36. Parents are the primary educators of children, and parents have the primary duty, which cannot be entirely delegated to others, to ensure that their children are properly catechized, that is, brought up in the fullness of the Catholic faith. We parents must take this duty seriously, and we must begin to take back control of our children's education, as is our right, because this right has been delegated to others in this country, and in many cases our rights as parents have been usurped by others. This has not always happened with malicious intent, but in some cases it has, especially where the secular state is involved. Pope Pius XI, in another quote from his encyclical letter Divini Ilias Magistri on Christian education, wrote, and I think he's quoting Pope Leo here, "Therefore, it is the duty of parents to make every effort to prevent any invasion of their rights in this matter, and to make absolutely sure that the education of their children remain under their own control in keeping with their Christian duty, and above all, to refuse to send them to those schools in which there is a danger of imbibing the deadly poison of impiety. Divini Illis Magistri 35. I attended a meeting when the suggestion was first mooted about including religious education as an exam subject in Irish schools. After the general discussion, I stood up and said that I had just 2 questions to ask. The people at the meeting were well used to me, so they said, "Go on, John, ask the first question." If a student gets an A in religion in the leaving certificate, are they guaranteed a place in heaven? They answered, "What's the second question, John?" If a student gets an F in religion in the leaving certificate, does it mean that they will go to hell? You see, as Catholic parents, our primary job is to raise saints for God's kingdom in heaven, not to get students to pass religion exams. We need to pass on the torch of faith, symbolized by the candle at our children's baptism, so that it becomes a fountain of living water springing up to life everlasting. We must resist everything that opposes this duty of raising saints for God, and do all in our power to bring this sanctity about in our own families. One of my indelible memories of my father is that often when I arrived home late at night, I would see the light on in the sitting room. I would open the door and my father would be there kneeling at an armchair, saying his night prayers. He was a devout Catholic and a very erudite man. I remember once asking my father about the fact that my siblings had all fallen away from the faith. It was shortly after he turned 60. He told me that it often felt to him that there was an evil force working against him as he tried to pass on to his children the faith that had been passed on to him. He identified one area where this evil force was coming from, but only after it was too late. He told me that teachers in the Catholic secondary school he had sent us to were undermining the faith of his children because they did not uphold that faith themselves, and that the school had failed in its duty to protect us from this. But he found out too late. The damage had already been done, and that damage to his children's faith continues to this very day. None of my 5 living siblings have practiced their Catholic faith in over 30 years. 30 years without availing of the sacramental life of the Catholic Church. I could speak for several hours on the Catholic education problem, but I want to give a few pertinent quotes from Casti Connubii, because the modern day understanding of Catholic marriage falls far short of what the Catholic Church has always taught. These quotes may seem controversial, because in our modern world, a false notion of equality is often used to undermine the constant teachings of the Catholic Church. We saw this false notion of equality used with great effect in the so-called same-sex marriage referendum. Here's Casti Connubii 26. Domestic society being confirmed, therefore, by this bond of love, there should flourish in it that order of love, as St. Augustine calls it. This order includes both the primacy of the husband with regard to the wife and children, the ready subjection of the wife and her willing obedience, which the apostle commends in these words: "Let women be subject to their husbands as to the Lord, because the husband is the head of the wife, and Christ is the head of the church." This is probably one of the most misunderstood and least liked teachings of the Catholic Church on marriage and family, the headship of the husband over his wife. Pope Pius XI makes sure to clarify. This subjection, however, does not deny or take away the liberty which fully belongs to the woman, both in view of her dignity as a human person and in view of her most noble office as wife and mother and companion. Nor does it bid her obey her husband's every request, if not in harmony with right reason or with the dignity due to wife. nor in fine does it imply that wife should be put on a level with those persons who in law are called minors, to whom it is not customary to allow free exercise of their rights on account of their lack of mature judgment or of their ignorance of human affairs. But it forbids that exaggerated liberty which cares not for the good of the family. It forbids that in this body which is the family, the heart be separated from the head, to the great detriment of the whole body, and the proximate danger of ruin. For if the man is the head, the woman is the heart, and as he occupies the chief place in ruling, so she may and ought to claim for herself the chief place in love. He further clarifies in number 28, again this subject of subjection of wife to husband, in its degree and manner may vary according to the different conditions of persons, place and time. In fact, if the husband neglect his duty, it falls to the wife to take his place in directing the family. But the structure of the family and its fundamental law, established and confirmed by God, must always and everywhere be maintained intact. With great wisdom, our predecessor Leo XIII of happy memory, in the encyclical on Christian marriage, which we have already mentioned, its Arcanum, speaking of this order to be maintained between man and wife, teaches, the man is the ruler of the family and the head of the woman. But because she is flesh of his flesh and bone of his bone, let her be subject and obedient to the man, not as a servant, but as a companion, so that nothing be lacking of honour or of dignity in the obedience which she pays. Let divine charity be the constant guide of their mutual relations, both in him who rules and in her who obeys, since each bears the image, the one of Christ, the other of the church." Unquote. Catholics need to understand that this order within marriage, the headship of the husband and subjection of the wife, is in its turn ordered to the primary end of marriage, the begetting and educating of children for the kingdom of God. So too the secondary ends of marriage are also ordered and subordinate to the primary end of marriage. Sadly, especially in the Western world, for at least the last 50 years, this order has rarely been proclaimed by those charged with guiding Christ's flock. And as a result, we see the degradation of our society. If you go online, you will find any number of Catholic and Christian blogs devoted to getting men to become manly again. The absent father is a common theme amongst Christians who are worried about drug and alcohol abuse, about the number of young men in prison, about the increase in those claiming to be same-sex attracted. And there is much truth in what these people are saying. Catholics need to study the constant teachings of the Catholic Church on marriage and family life, and to humbly accept them and diligently seek to put them into practice, whilst ignoring the many novel ideas that are being promoted nowadays. The problems that we currently face, particularly in education, will not change, however, until enough Catholic parents come together and reclaim their duty by insisting that the Catholic schools once more become Catholic. In this, they may have to put up with resistance from the state, from their bishops, and from other, in inverted commas, Catholic parents. But so be it. Because the rot has been allowed to go so deep, you may have to consider starting again and founding new Catholic schools. Will that be difficult? Of course it will. Will it be more difficult than it was for Nan O'Nagel or for Blessed Edmund Ignatius Rice, who acted illegally in founding schools and who both lived during the penal times? In some ways, yes, but perhaps we parents have become too soft in this material age we live in and too easily allow others to dictate what we can or cannot do for our own children. Others may have to consider homeschooling their children. We chose this option in 2005. And the most frequent question we have been asked by other people when we mention that we homeschool our children is, are you allowed to do that? Is it legal? I now answer that question with another question. Do you consult with the government or ask permission before you decide what you will give your children for breakfast? But how did we come to this stage? Why is it that parents think that they need permission from the state to carry out their fundamental God-given duty as parents? They have been told so by the state, And sadly, our bishops have not been very good at defending the rights of the Catholic Church in education, nor the rights of Catholic parents. I think the greatest difficulty you will probably face when you decide once again to take control of your children's education, or to decide to tackle the problems currently in the Catholic schools, will be gathering enough parents who are of the same mind. For so many of today's parents have imbibed the secular rainbow culture, and they are no longer truly Catholic. But remember, you will not evangelize them and bring them back to the truth and beauty of the Catholic faith by going along with the status quo. Time will also pass, and your children will continue to grow and to need a proper Catholic education. As St. Paul says, "Behold, now is the acceptable time. Behold, now is the day of salvation." 2 Corinthians 6:2. You cannot wait for the right school to open, so you must act to protect your children's faith now, because regardless of the difficulties, your duty as parents remains to see to it that your children are properly educated in the Catholic faith. If your children do stray from the sound foundation of Catholic teaching, it will be very difficult to regain them afterwards. So the times for Catholic parents are more urgent than ever, and homeschooling may be the only short-term solution to making sure that you do your duty by your children. The future of Catholic education in Ireland rests on the shoulders of faithful Catholic parents who have a duty to ensure that their children are educated in the full and authentic doctrines and teachings of the Catholic Church, to help them to live their lives according to those doctrines and teachings, to protect them from error so that they will learn to worship God and become saints for all eternity in heaven. When enough parents accept and begin to carry out this responsibility, we will then begin to see the slow return to Christian civilization here in Ireland. Do not be afraid of the responsibility. Sacramental marriage brings with it the channel of grace that allows parents to fulfill the mission entrusted to us by God. God does not command the impossible, but we must ask him for the graces necessary. Parents are the first and most important educators of their children, and they also possess a fundamental competency in this area. They are educators because they are parents. The Pontifical Council for the Family, the Truth and Meaning of Human Sexuality. So together, we must have great hope for the future of our children, for Catholic marriage and family life, for our society and for our Irish nation. But we must take the necessary actions and work tirelessly to nurture that hope and to bring about the conditions under which our children are most likely to blossom as young Catholic men and women. I'm John Lacken. May God bless you.